If you're like me and you love card games, but lately, the big names, they're starting to feel a little bit stale or perhaps pirate creep. Expensive digital entries, and sometimes the feeling of communities being unheard has been getting to you lately, and sometimes you just want something fresh. Enter Elestrals. The Elestrals team reached out to me to send me an influencer box, essentially, that has starter decks, booster box that I will cover with no strings attached. There's no sponsorship for this video at all. This is honestly my first impressions. I've actually heard about the game from last year from the digital client announcement that they made, especially for the free-to-play aspect for it. And yes, I will be covering the beta in this video. Got a chance to actually play the beta myself, and I'm gonna show different aspects of the digital client so far. And of course, disclaimer, it is still in testing. They're still getting feedback, but boy, like, there are some things to talk about, so you want to stick to the very end for that. I'm also a multi-TCG player, but also on this journey will be my wife, who hasn't played a TCG in over 20 years. We're talking about since like the Yu-Gi Kaiba starter decks. Let's get right into it. Shout out to the Elestrals team that they're being so generous to send this amount of product with no strings attached. This included starter decks, a booster box, multitude of packs, and even a plushie for the merch. I mean, look how adorable it is. And they literally just told me, we just want you to try it out. Give us any feedback. That's it. To me, this says a lot about their confidence, but also their community first approach as well. And as I was diving into the box myself, they have material to get you started properly, and even resources for you to access online through their website, through their main channel as well. Which again, making it very accessible for even to learning the game itself. As someone who has worked with Bushiroad before, with like box openings, giveaways, and even doing a card reveal, this is genuinely one of the best influencer kits I've ever seen. Now getting into the game itself, like playing the physical card game, what does it entail? What does it look like? How fairly simple it is for somebody to pick it up essentially too. I asked my wife if she would be willing to play. One of the key things that I really noticed right away is that it has a lot of similarities with Yu-Gi-Oh, especially the old school formats such as like Edison, GOAT format, in terms of monsters, spells, and traps, having that back and forth essentially. And so that's where I brought up to my wife, like, hey, do you still remember how to play like old school Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, do you even remember how to activate a trap card like Mirror Force? And she looked at me too, like, of course I know how to activate Mirror Force. That was one of the funniest responses I've seen in a while. And so with her not really having played since then, she was able to still remember those kind of basic mechanics from that game and throw it into this. Normal summons and tribute summons can be very similar to normal casting and also ascension as well. Also kind of similar to like Pokemon where you evolve essentially too. The spells and trap cards essentially too are instant ruins, and there's two types. There's the invoke and there's the counter. Not only that, she was able to pick it up pretty quickly, but she also beat me on the first game too. That's crazy. What was also cool is that it was fun, but also very memorable for both of us. Some of the key things that are different about this card game, though, is the spirit deck. You don't necessarily just activate cards for free, essentially. Just like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you just do things and you get effects, essentially, right? However, every time you normal cast, do Ascension, use a ruin, essentially, you have to use your spirits to meet the minimum enchantment cost for those cards. But here's the catch. It is also your life. So as soon as you're at 0 spirits in deck and you're forced to use a spirit or expend, in this case, you lose the game. In essence, there's no free summons, there's no free activations. This adds a little bit of strategy to it as well. I mean, if you're familiar with Magic and even Pokemon, it has a very similar aspect to that. If you're a Pot of Greed fan, meet Nectar of the Gods. So you use 2 spirits to actually be able to draw 2 cards. The one thing that my wife pointed out is that since she hasn't really played other games, Yu-Gi-Oh made it obvious, well, what was a monster, what was a spell, and what was a trap, mainly by the colors. But when it came to this game, a lot of it becomes to the elements that you need. Basically, you need like elemental types with spirits to enchant your cards. So your Elestrals, your ruins, pretty look similar in this terms of that overall color, such as purple for lunar. It wasn't until like the generic cards such as like the Nectar of the Gods, the Ambrasias, that are obviously that look different, but mainly because they are generic use. So you can use any elemental spirits essentially to use those cards. As an experienced player myself, you start to pick out what are the icons, what are the details that I need to look for in a card. You can pretty much pick that up after a game or two. So it's not a big deal. It's just one of those nuances that my wife saw. Now we're getting into the digital client. So again, as a disclaimer, this is the beta itself. So this is geared to testing, feedback too. This is not the finished product, but they are actively working on it with every 2 weeks, essentially, with updates. This includes new cards added to the client itself, also fixing any weird bugs or maybe like UI related stuff too. And what's really cool is that these are the development team that worked on the Pixelborn app for Lorcana. And again, it's designed to be free to play. So as soon as you download the game into Steam, install it, you play it, you go to your deck builder and you have access to all the cards themselves, all the functional cards, essentially, literally to build a deck and then just join rank or a custom game with a friend or something, and then just play for fun or even play testing, especially if you have an upcoming tournament as well. I really like this because there's no paywall to essentially get everything that you need for your specific favorite deck to play. Or even as new cards come out, you don't have to worry about paying for like DLC or any extra fees or maybe a subscription thing. Like it's just, even in normal video games, like nobody wants that. The way that they approach it is free to play, and also it's like custom skins. That's where you can spend money if you want to basically bling out if you want to. And you can do that with specific cards too that you really care about. So naturally, I wanted to see different aspects of the client, not just the gameplay, but also seeing how it feels and looks like while you're playing to itself. So you get a good view of the field. You could also look at your spirit deck pretty easily if you want to. But they used like these other icons that you can just use the spirits that you need when you start activating cards, essentially. And that's really when you need them the most anyway. So that seemed really fluid as well. Also the interaction, because it is an automated client. So you don't do anything manual. Everything has to be like a certain action that the game only lets you do. It'll let you know like, hey, waiting on your opponent's response if they're going to do anything. So this really comes up, especially with the equivalent of trap cards, such as your counter ruins, essentially. Poison Tip Arrow, to name a few, Gorgon's Gaze, Tsunami. And really they focus on key animations of like just a simple attacking, defense mode, attack mode. So these are very straightforward animations that you would feel natural, essentially. Also some customization things that they already had implemented. So you can have custom sleeves that you have. You can even customize your field too. One of the very first things that I went into was the tutorial. So this is, again, key for new players, especially if they don't have any physical product. This is basically their first experience. The tutorial is pretty straightforward. It walks you through it to the basics of Elestrals 2. And for the most part, it did what it's supposed to do. To learn the basic mechanics and also some of the terms, one of the nuances that I did have was like making certain things a little more obvious. So for example, the usage of spirits, I was looking for the spirits, like how can I was trying to click on the icon itself that if I look a little more closer, I realized there were side arrows that let you increase or decrease that number count of usage for the spirits, essentially. And I was like, oh, it took me literally like a whole minute trying to figure that out. And then I'm like, oh, there it is. It's very tiny. Maybe something like that will help a little bit better too, but it could also just be amazing. Overall, it looks beautiful. Like the music is really nice. I've been playing the beta for basically 2 weeks and the music doesn't get old. And even when you're doing deck building, I actually just visually appreciated how the cards look like. The colors really help, and just being able to read the cards and also the artwork itself. Also being the beta, again, disclaimer, I didn't find any functional bugs at this point where I actually, jumped in. I'm sure there was a lot more issues that they've resolved already since the alpha itself. But I did find some interesting UI elements that, like, for example, there was Hestia that actually has more than one effect that would proc at the same time. And it'll show the chain, but it just shows the picture of the card. So then, like, which affects which one's chain link 1 or 2, And then also, Astro Rabbit specifically lets you check the top 3 and you pick a card and add it to your hand, essentially. And it has the 3 cards. And naturally, I would just click on the card that I actually want. But then I realized that wasn't actually doing anything. And so it was the text above it on each card that said draw. So you actually had to select the text itself, click on it, and then it'll select the card that you want to, and then you confirm. So it was just something that I'm like, hey, I think it would be a nice quality of life if you also made the picture of the card clickable to select it as well. And then I can click confirm. And again, A-Drive and the team were already saying that that's something that they're already working. They have a backlog of items that they're working on for the UI specifically, for improvements and other feedback. For my Vanguard players, I'm sure you know of like the mulligan system that we have, which helps a lot of consistency with games. So that way you don't open up with a brick hand, right? Elestrals does have mulligan. What's different is that it's not free. So technically, if you want to mulligan your hand, you have to expand 2 spirits every time you want to mulligan. So that's correct. You could actually mulligan more than once. But again, each time you do it, you expend 2 spirits. And at first it may seem like, well, I'm taking hits to my life, to my resources. Why would I do that for a mulligan? And then you realize that there's cards like Embrasia. So depending on your deck building, there might be even strategy with your mulligan as well. Other impressions that I wanted to highlight is essentially the community and dev transparency. So for example, when they reached out to me with no strings attached, I actually want to get a chance to be able to call somebody, have a conversation like, hey, if you're going to send me this product, no strings attached, I'd like to, kind of see what's the vision, what's behind, especially with last year's announcement with their digital client. I really wanted to learn more the vision. And what was really cool is that A-Drive actually took 30 minutes out of his time to actually get on a call with me and answer my questions. He was very direct, very kind. I could tell like he had a vision like that this really is a long-term TCG project. You could just tell that he was all in, especially since he came from a Pokemon YouTuber background that hit 1 million subscribers at one point and really is focusing on this full time. This is what he pretty much lives and breathes every single day. And he has a team that's working with the community aspect, with their feedback too. So he's open to a lot of feedback and making sure that things are done right. If mistakes do happen, then it's okay to own them up. And then also like, how can we make the experience even better for the next person? And I think that's a really good approach, especially for the long-term mindset. And the reason that I say this is because they actually listen versus like over the years, you may have felt that as a community for various TCGs, there are moments that you feel unheard. I mean, even from a creator standpoint, it feels like, do we really have any voice and say to help improve the games that we love to play and put all this time into as well? They actually just had their first in-person regional back in March, and they had over 400 attendees, and it sold out in 3 minutes. Like, that is freaking impressive. I know for Cardfight Vanguard, it took years to even get to that point for their regionals back in the day as well. They have multiple virtual events every so often too. So you can play basically in the sense of remote fight. You have your physical cards and you play virtually, remotely, essentially. And they have prizes. They also have the worlds that they've already had before and they're already prepping for the next one. And again, all this being said, this is still an indie game. And that's pretty wild just to say that. But there's real signs that this has some long-term potential, which I'm excited. So I came in curious, especially with last year's announcement for their digital client that's free to play. And I left impressed. Again, it is easy to learn, but it is also, there's some depth that's still in the game itself. There's so many different decks you can build. People are constantly evolving and changing with their deck list too, especially as more cards come out with the new sets too. I asked even the Elestrals team and they're like, here's a deck list you should try out. It's called Fire Nexus. And I was having a blast with that deck too. Like, I was like, oh, okay, this is totally different from what I was playing. And there's a different strategy behind it too. And there was cards like Eruption, where it's like, I expend 2 spirits, but then you are forced to expend 3. If you enjoy strategic card games, or even just like the old school formats of Yu-Gi-Oh, this is absolutely worth a shot too. Again, we've already had Yu-Gi-Oh players that have transitioned as well to give the game a try. Again, the digital client will be free on Steam once it's officially released. Again, it is in beta too. So I'll put the link here so you can wish list it too. And also the links for their channels and website and stuff if you want to see more how to play stuff as well. And if there's enough interest, I might even explore Elestrals more on this channel. But again, it comes down to what do you think about Elestrals? Does it catch your eye? So I want to hear your feedback, your thoughts too. So drop a comment down below. Hit that like button too if you appreciated this video as well. And if you're new here to this channel, you can check out my how to start playing Cardfight Vanguard video over here, or also basically starting off with GOAT format in Yu-Gi-Oh as well over here. See you next time. Bye!